The Zephyrian High Council had never seen anything like it. Scout Commander Vex High stood before the assembled tribunal, his usual pristine biosuit torn and stained, his 4 arms bearing scars that hadn't been there when he departed for the 3rd planet of the Sol system 6 rotations ago. But it wasn't his physical condition that had the council members shifting uncomfortably in their crystalline seats. It was the crude metal blade strapped across his back and the foreign words tumbling from his vocal synthesizer. "Report, Commander!" High Counselor Mirthak commanded, her tendrils flickering with barely contained anxiety. Vex High straightened, and when he spoke, his voice carried an accent that made the translation matrices struggle. "Honored Council, I have observed the species designated as humans on the planet they call Earth. My assessment—" He paused, searching for words in his native tongue before switching to the alien syllables that had somehow infected his speech patterns. "My assessment is that we should leave them the hell alone." The council chamber erupted in shocked chittering. High Counselor Mirthak's tendrils flared violet. "Commander, explain yourself. And why are you contaminating our language with their primitive vocalizations?" Vex High's mandibles clicked, a nervous habit he'd developed during his time on Earth. "Because, High Counselor, their language has words for concepts we've never needed. Words like stubborn and spite and hold my beer." He activated his holo display, showing images of Earth's blue marble suspended in space. "I arrived expecting to find a typical pre-warp civilization, divided, short-sighted, easily conquered. What I found instead—" The display shifted to show a human child pulling a splinter from her finger without crying, then to footage of humans running directly toward explosions to help strangers. "I found a species that chooses to suffer for others. They call it heroism, but that's an inadequate translation. These beings will literally throw themselves into harm's way for creatures they've never met." Counselor Zarnet leaned forward, his optical sensors whirring. "Surely this is merely pack behavior. Many species protect their own." "No," Vex High said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Not their own, anyone, everyone. I watched a human female risk her life to save what they call a cat, a small predator that serves no practical purpose beyond companionship. I watched human males run into burning structures to rescue the belongings of strangers. They have a saying, 'We don't leave anyone behind.'" The display showed more footage. Humans building shelters for other species. Humans sharing food during famines. Humans diving into turbulent waters to save drowning swimmers they'd never met. "This is all very touching," High Counselor Mirthak said dismissively, "but hardly relevant to our expansion protocols. They're primitive. No warp technology, no unified planetary government." "They're not primitive," Vex High interrupted, his hand unconsciously moving to the sword's hilt. "They're focused. Do you know what they were doing when I arrived? Fighting each other, yes, but also launching rockets into space powered by controlled explosions. They strap themselves to bombs and ride them to the stars because they refuse to be contained by gravity." The chamber fell silent. "I made contact with one of their military units," Vex High continued. "Standard procedure, observe their command structure, assess their weapons technology. What I found was a sergeant named Martinez who spent 3 days teaching me to fight with this." He drew the sword, its simple steel gleaming under the chamber's lights. "Not because I asked, but because I mentioned I felt defenseless without my technology. He gave me this blade that his grandfather carried in something they call the Second World War, a conflict where they chose to fight a genocidal regime even when it meant massive casualties. Martinez told me, Sometimes you've got to stand up to bullies, even when you're scared. Then he taught me forms that his people have been perfecting for thousands of years. Vex-High demonstrated a few movements, the sword cutting through the air with practiced precision. He didn't ask for anything in return, didn't interrogate me about my technology or my species. He just saw someone who needed help and provided it. "Commander," Counselor Zarnet said carefully, "you seem to have developed an emotional attachment to these creatures. This is concerning." "Emotional attachment?" Vex-High laughed, the sound harsh and alien coming from his synthesizer. "Yes, I suppose I have. Do you know what Martinez said when I told him I was leaving? He said, 'Keep the sword. Where you're going, you might need it. And remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right anyway.'" The holo display shifted to show Earth's moon, pockmarked with craters and bearing the scars of cosmic bombardment. This species looked at their satellite, a dead rock hanging in space, and decided to visit it. Not because they needed to, but because it was there. They planted a flag and left footprints in the dust just to prove they could. "What are you recommending, Commander?" High Counselor Mirthak asked. Vex-High sheathed the sword and looked directly at the Council. "I'm recommending we mark their system as restricted and move on. Find another sector to expand into. These humans, they don't just fight to survive. They fight to protect others. They fight for principles. They fight because they believe fighting itself can be noble." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And if we threaten them or their neighbors, they won't just resist. They'll teach others to resist too. They'll share their technology, their tactics, their courage. Before we know it, every species in this galaxy will know how to make swords and how to use them." The council chamber erupted in debate, but Vex-High remained silent, one hand resting on the sword that had become more than a weapon. It had become a reminder that somewhere in the universe there existed beings who would give a stranger the tools to defend themselves simply because it was the right thing to do. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Earth would remain untouched, its coordinates sealed in the restricted archives. Some fights, the Council decided, were better avoided entirely. As Vex-High left the chamber, he could swear he heard Martinez's voice echoing in his memory. "Sometimes the best victory is the fight you don't have to fight." The sword remained at his side, a promise and a warning in equal measure.